Hello, everyone, and welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I am Mike Barner. He is Kirien Sprecher, and we come to you every Wednesday to give you the information that you need to win your fantasy basketball leagues. Kirien, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Let's get into it.
All right, the big news from last night was Luka Doncic in his first game since being traded to the Lakers playing against the Mavericks. He had, of course, a triple-double, 19 points, 15 rebounds, 12 assists. He also had 3 steals and 2 blocks. He played 35 minutes. That's the most that he's played in a game since being traded to the Lakers. The only downside was he went 1 for 7 from 3-pointers. Another notable stat line from that game, Kyrie Irving, he went off for the Mavericks. He had 35 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and 5 3-pointers. He played 40 minutes, so some heavy minute totals in these games. But Kirien, no big surprise here. I mean, Luka didn't score a ton of points, but not a surprise that he had a fantastic overall game against his former squad.
Yeah, I think the rebounding the last couple games has been the huge story for Doncic. 36 boards over the last 3 games. You also mentioned he had 5 stocks last night. So definitely a little more energized than we're used to with Luka. You mentioned the poor shooting. That has kind of been a thing with him in a Lakers uniform so far, and I expect that to continue. Getting used to a new team and everything. He's a very heliocentric guy, so obviously he's used to having the ball in his hands. Now he has to share it. Admittedly, I went to the movies last night, took advantage of the $5 movies here in Madison, Wisconsin. When I came out of the movies, I had one notification about the Lakers game, and it was Luka hits big time deep 3 and stares down Lakers bench. And then I look at the stats, I'm like, the man has 1 made 3-pointer, and it's the one thing that gets tweeted out on all of the social media. Obviously, a super fun game. I'll get into how that game ended. I thought I took the under on all of Luka's points, but I took the over on all of the rebounds, so I hit on that. So I was excited to see it. But the Lakers should have won this game by more, and I'll get to what happened in the fourth quarter in the what was that stat line, a little foreshadowing for you.
Yeah, I think we could continue to see added rebounds from both Luka and LeBron James simply because Lakers are playing so small. Yeah. Jackson Hayes, he has not been playing heavy minutes, even though he's their starting center. A lot of small lineups, a lot of LeBron, Luka, and Rui Hachimura. So I think we should probably continue to see plenty of rebounds from Luka moving forward. All right, another injury. Of course, it's the NBA, so we've got to get back to injuries after talking about some healthy players for once. Darius Garland missed his 2nd straight game Tuesday against the Magic. Cavaliers won both of those games. They beat the Magic. They beat the Grizzlies the game prior. Notable stat line here, Ty Jerome against the Grizzlies, he had 26 points and 3 3-pointers. Against the Magic last night, he had 20 points and 4 3-pointers. He has averaged 15.3 points, 3.7 assists, 1.2 steals, and 1.8 3-pointers over his last 12 games. Probably not concerned here long-term about Darius Garland, but what do you think about Ty Jerome, Kirien, who is available in 79% of Yahoo leagues?
All right, so I'm going to separate this into the real world and fantasy world because obviously I think his fantasy value isn't as high as his real world value. I think the biggest reason why the Cavs were willing to trade away Caris LeVert and bring in a guy like DeAndre Hunter, who's a major upgrade over, Isaac Okoro and George Niang and all of these other guys, is because of Ty Jerome. Caris LeVert was the backup point guard for a long time, and he did a great job. He was one of the best backup point guards or backup guards. He can play both spots. And Ty Jerome has just been fantastic and kind of made them able to get rid of LeVert. Obviously, with Garland out, Jerome's going to get a lot more opportunities, so his fantasy value increases. As just like a backup guard, though, there's not much to see in 12-team leagues. But I really like Ty Jerome as a player, and as long as Garland is out, might as well stream Jerome in. I wasn't surprised to see Garland miss another game last night. He stayed in the game last Thursday against the Knicks when he initially suffered this injury, but he finished that contest with only 5 points, 2 for 12 shooting. You could tell that it was nagging him. Now he's missed 2 straight. The Cavs, hold a 6-game lead on the Celtics. They play each other on Friday. So the Cavs are in a really good spot right now where they don't really need to rush guys back. They can take some time. I expect Garland to play on Friday. And then if he doesn't play Friday, maybe we can get a little bit concerned there. But for right now, very yellow flag for Garland. I expect him back in the lineup before too long.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Garland. I do like Ty Jerome quite a bit, simply because, like you said, the Cavaliers have such a big lead in the standings. And they're also blowing teams out.
That's fair.
So there's going to be a lot of fourth quarters where maybe Garland and or Mitchell don't play at all. So I think you're not going to get 20 points from him on a nightly basis, but can he continue to average around 15 like he has been lately? Yeah, I think he could. So if you need scoring and threes, he's not going to give you much anything else. But if you need scoring and threes and a streaming option, I do like Jerome.
And I told that's a very good point. I said, daily lineups, but that's a very good point. As we get into the next, 3 or 4 weeks, there could be a lot of, fourth quarter absences or just entire absences from Garland and Mitchell, which would make Jerome a very strong fantasy play.
Now, you mentioned the Boston Celtics. They played last night against the Raptors, but Kristaps Porzingis, Jrue Holiday, and Al Horford all did not. Holiday and Horford were rest situations, essentially. Kristaps Porzingis was 6, so we're not really worried about anything there. One thing to note from that game, Jaylen Brown, he appeared to suffer a leg injury at some point. He did continue to play through the game. However, quick turnaround here for the Celtics. They play tonight against the Pistons, so I would not be surprised if Jaylen Brown sits out tonight. What do you think, Kirien?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. The Brown is really the only concerning thing or thing to watch here with the Celtics. Like I said, they are 6 back of the Cavs, and then they have a 4-game lead on the third-place Knicks. So they're also kind of in this weird spot in the standings where they're not really – I don't want to say they're not really playing for much, but they're not really playing for much. So I wouldn't be surprised if Brown sat out here as, a cautious approach, and I expect that to happen over the next couple of weeks. Though I think Joe Mazzulla is kind of crazy. Like Joe Mazzulla is not the guy that's like, we're going to rest for a full week heading into the playoffs. He's probably like, we're probably going to go even harder the final week, So there's some things there with Joe Mazzulla, but like missing a game or two for Brown isn't the biggest deal.
Yeah, he does a good job of staggering their rest days. Like he'll give two guys a rest day, and then the next day 2 different guys will get a rest day. So you probably will have to play around a little bit there. One thing I did want to note, Peyton Pritchard had 20 points Tuesday against the Raptors. He has scored at least 20 points in 4 of his last 7 games. So a little volatile bench scoring from him. But as we start to see, the Celtics' number one goal, obviously, is to be healthy for what they hope is another deep playoff run. So we could see some more minutes from Peyton Pritchard. That's guys like Holiday and Jaylen Brown and Derek White get some rest days down the stretch. Now, another injury we got to talk about. Karl-Anthony Towns is questionable for tonight's game against the 76ers. He has missed just 5 games all season. We've loved Towns. He's averaging 13.5 rebounds per game, which is the highest mark of his career. Probably not a long-term injury here. He's been on the injury report a lot of times. He does tend to play through it. Tibbs, of course, loves to make sure his guys are out there. But if there is no Towns tonight and maybe for a couple of games, Precious Achiuwa would be the guy to stream in a daily league, right? Right, Kirien?
Yeah, absolutely. I would go there. The Towns injury initially looked horrible. He was going up for a dunk attempt, came down awkward, went immediately to the locker room. And then he just came back, and they were down by like 15 and 20, and he came back and played the last couple minutes of the fourth quarter against the Celtics. So that was a weird situation. He says he's good. The medical staff, it doesn't seem too concerned. But you always got to be concerned about Tibbs throwing guys out there for 40 minutes when they got bad knees and stuff. So no concern yet for me, but this is definitely a storyline to watch. The only other note that I had here was maybe he sits out just as like an ode to Joel Embiid because they're playing the Sixers, like fellow big man, like let's sit this one out together.
Now, another star that's dealing with an injury and is questionable for Wednesday is Tyrese Haliburton. He has a groin injury, questionable against the Raptors. He's missed 1 game all season, which has been great for him. Now, TJ McConnell is also questionable for the Pacers. He missed Monday's game against the Nuggets. So if there's no Haliburton and no McConnell, maybe a big Andrew Nembhard spot here. What do you think, Kirien?
Yeah, I like Andrew Nembhard. He kind of just plays a similar role no matter who's on the court, if that makes sense. So he can get hot no matter who, if it's Nembhard or if it's Haliburton or McConnell or Ben Shepherd out there. So I kind of like Mathurin in this situation if both of those guys sat out. He's been coming off the bench since Aaron Nesmith's come back, but when they miss guys, Mathurin is kind of like the next guy up. No matter who it is in the lineup, he steps up, he gets a bigger role, and he's one of those guys that can really flourish. Whereas I think Nembhard kind of has a lower ceiling and a higher floor, where Mathurin has a much higher ceiling. You mentioned Haliburton has only missed one game this season. I will mention that is also was due to a left groin strain, and now he's on the injury report with left groin soreness. I don't know if that's necessarily related and it's just a lingering thing, or if he suffered a setback, but he's been playing really well, so it hasn't been impacting him over the last week or so.
Now it's time for the Bulls Minute, and we're going to pair it here with an injury. Nikola Vucevic is listed as doubtful for Wednesday's game against the Clippers. Jalen Smith is also out. He has a concussion. So we're going to get some Zach Collins. He started with both of them out Monday against the 76ers. He had 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 block over 28 minutes. But Kirien here, maybe the guy that sees the biggest boost in stats is Josh Giddey. He had 16. That's right, 1-6. 16 rebounds against the 76ers. Over the last 3 games, he's averaging 13.3 rebounds. So maybe we're looking at Josh Giddey rebounding props tonight, Kirien?
Yeah, I would like that. I'd like any props with Giddey. Since the Levine trade, he's really been balling out statistically, at least, putting up a lot of stats. Vucevic rarely misses games, let alone 2 in a row. So this is a bit concerning for the stretch run. I like Giddey and Buzelis right now in Chicago. Those are my 2, like probably the only guys that I really want in a standard like 12-team fantasy league. And then if you're in a deeper league and if you're deciding between a center between Collins and Smith, I know you really like Jalen Smith. His per minute production is great. His season high in minutes was 23. Last night, Zach Collins played 28. So like, is that already like Collins has only played a couple games for the team and he's already playing more minutes than Smith? So I do agree with you that Smith has a higher per minute production, but I just don't know if he'll ever get those minutes.
No, you can't have Smith on any roster unless you're in like a 30-team league and everybody's on a roster. Yeah,
This Vucevic injury, like he never misses 2 games in a row. Like this could turn into he's out for reevaluated in 3 weeks situation really fast, and then maybe Jalen Smith and Zach Collins are interesting targets.
Yeah, you'd have to get some concrete news that he's going to be out a while. As of right now, I mean, you could still add Klingon in most leagues, so I'd rather add him over
for sure
over Smith or Collins there. So our guy, the Bulls minute's officially over, but we're still going to talk about the Bulls game tonight. On the other side of things, our guy, Norman Powell, is out with a knee injury, 4th straight game miss. Powell, we need you. This is an important time, Powell. We need you. Come on. Now, Amir Coffey has played more, but he hasn't had much of a fantasy impact. The last 3 games without Powell, James Harden has averaged 24.3 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. Man, this is a great spot for James Harden tonight against the Bulls. Hopefully, we see Norman Powell back soon, but you don't like to see a guy miss 4 straight games with a knee injury on a team that is still fighting for playoff position. This is not a rest situation. This is a legit injury here.
Yeah, and the Clippers have been losing without Powell too, so that's another big thing. And you nailed it. The only thing I wanted to mention was that Powell dropped a season high 41 in his last game before the injury happened. The Clippers occupy the 6th seed right now, only 2 games ahead of the Kings, who are in 10th. So like this is a very important stretch for our fantasy teams and for the Clippers. So hopefully Powell, gets cleared here sooner or later, or we at least get a concrete update on when he can be back.
Norm, we need you. We need you, Norm. Get that knee going. We need you for the fantasy playoffs. All right, now we're going to end on the Golden State Warriors here for this first segment. They are 6-1 since acquiring Jimmy Butler. During that span, Stephen Curry has averaged 27 points and 4.6 3-pointers a game, and that's despite him playing fewer than 30 minutes in 2 of those 7 games because they were blowouts. Jimmy Butler has averaged 18.6 rebounds, 5.4 assists, 1.4 steals, and that's with him playing just 19 minutes yesterday against the Hornets. The Warriors look like a completely different team. The schedule has aided them a little bit. The Hornets, and some of these teams they're playing are not exactly juggernauts, but the addition of Jimmy Butler is not only good for his fantasy value, but it also looks to be a boost for Stephen Curry.
Yeah, absolutely. Steph has been Stephing, man. Last night wasn't like his best game, but like you said, his recent stretch has been vintage Steph. And that wasn't really the case for the first, half of the season, 3/4 of the season. I know it's Dallas and Charlotte, their last 2 games. But the Warriors look like the old school Warriors, man, where they would come out of halftime and in the 3rd quarter, they just put a stranglehold on you and make teams like literally quit. like you're playing open gym. Like everybody just walks off the court, the fourth quarter, all of the subs are coming in. That's been the vibes the last 2 games. Steph is re-energized. Jimmy seems to be a flawless fit. As long as Jimmy has that energy, I think the Warriors could be a problem. But that Western Conference right now, it's like you go on a 3-game winning streak, you're looking good. You go on a 3-game losing streak, and things get ugly real fast. So they got to keep it up.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I would not want to play the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs. That's not the same team that built most of this record that they have right now. This is a very different team. So we're going to talk. We've talked about guys that we want to add. We've talked about it a lot. But in order to do that, we got to drop somebody. So we're going to talk about some struggling veterans that it may or may not be time to move on from in fantasy basketball. But before we do that, a word from our good friends at Edge Boost. Have you ever had your debit card declined or had to call your bank at 3 a.m. in Vegas? Edge Boost is the first consumer-facing online bank dedicated to the gaming industry. There are numerous benefits to using Edge Boost. $250,000 per day in debit deposits, unlimited withdrawals, cash back on sports betting, DFS, and sweeps. Deposit $25, get $25. 100% approval for all gaming activity. Financial segmentation for discretion and responsible gaming. It's compatible today for prediction markets, iCasino, DFS, sports betting, lottery, brick and mortar casinos, horse racing, and sweeps. No transaction reviews or account freezes. Visit edgeboost.bet today and use promo code ROTOPOD. That's promo code ROTOPOD. Okay, now it's time to talk about some aging veterans here and whether or not it's time to move on from them in fantasy basketball. And first up is Jrue Holiday, who is rostered in 80% of Yahoo leagues. He is averaging 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1 steal, and 1.5 3-pointers over his last 15 games. He's only averaging 11 points per game for the season. He's shooting 44.4% from the field. His usage rate is down to 15.9%. Kirien, what are you doing with Jrue Holiday?
Before I get into this, I just want to say that there is a very real case for Jrue Holiday to be a Hall of Famer, especially if the Celtics win another title this year or in the next couple of years. Jrue Holiday has a case to be a Hall of Famer. With that said, he should not be rostered in 80% of leagues. He should probably be rostered in like 30% of leagues, guys. Come on. I can't even make an argument for category leagues. I know like he's a defensive-minded guy. Oh, look at the steals. He's not really doing enough in steals to make it worth it. 90% free throw shooter, I guess, but only 1.3 attempts per game. So like he's not going to give you a boost in the free throw percentage. I'm dropping Holiday everywhere for a higher ceiling option, right? If I'm locked into a playoff spot, I'm not starting Jrue in the playoffs, right? I'm starting someone else. So why not try to stash a Klingon or someone that has a higher upside who might be worth a start in the playoffs? And if I'm not locked into the playoffs right now, I need to make a home run swing anyways because Holiday is not going to be getting me into the playoffs. Jrue Holiday, fantastic basketball player. On his current team, in his current situation, not a good fantasy basketball player. Please drop him. Go add somebody. Make a strong move here. Let's get into the playoffs, guys.
Couldn't agree more. Hit the bricks, Jrue Holiday. Time to get off fantasy basketball rosters. Guys, we can still add Isaiah Collier. He's available in 61% of Yahoo leagues. Talk about a massive contrast in upside. Collier all the way. Even if he's not available in your league, don't add Jrue. Add Ty Jerome. Yeah. Go get Ty Jerome for those games that they're – at least you'll get something every once in a while. But at best case scenario, you're going to get, a 12-point outing from Jrue Holiday? I mean, his usage rate is under 16% for the entire season, not just the last couple weeks, the entire season. So we are in agreement. We're moving on from Jrue Holiday. Another point guard here, Tyus Jones is rostered in 64% of Yahoo leagues. He has been replaced by Bradley Beal in the starting lineup. Guys, listen to this. Over the last 3 games since he got moved to the bench, Tyus Jones has averaged 1.7 points, 1.7 and 4 assists. He did not play more than 20 minutes in any of those games. He played 12 minutes against the Grizzlies yesterday. The game went to overtime. He played 12 minutes. I'm dropping him. You already know. You can tell by the tone of my voice he's a drop for me. How about you, Kirien? Is it time to move on from Tyus Jones?
Yes, I believe it is about that time. Look, like he was hovering around a top 100 guy in category leagues for a lot of the season. He's good field goal percentage, good free throw shooter, good 3-point shooter. He gets assists. He's starting, so he's playing a lot of minutes. But in this current stretch, like there's just no reason to roster him. He hasn't played 20 minutes since moving to the bench role. The Suns are 1-2 during that stretch, so like maybe they need to shake things up and they move him back in the starting lineup. But even if he gets his starting gig back, he's not going to like flirt with being a top 50 player, right? So go out, try to add a stash player. I don't think holding on to Tyus Jones is necessarily like a winning strategy right now. Like I said with Jrue Holiday, like even if you're in the playoffs, you're not going to start Tyus Jones. So he's on your bench. He's not going to do you any good. If a guy gets hurt and you have to plug in Tyus Jones, you're probably like, might as well pick up someone off the waivers. And instead of waiting 5 weeks from now to pick someone off the waivers, make that move right now. Move on from Tyus Jones.
Another veteran, Khris Middleton, is rostered in 66% of Yahoo leagues. He has played in just 2 games since joining the Wizards. He did not play more than 26 minutes in either of those games. He did not score more than 12 points in either of those games. Probably going to be limited here for the rest of the season. Likely not going to play in both halves of back-to-back sets. We've got potential shutdown issues here. What are you doing with Khris Middleton, Kirien?
I think the only way I can say yes is if you're in like a 16 team or deeper daily lineups league, because he has been starting. He's been playing 25 minutes. Maybe that gets boosted up closer to 30 after a couple of games. But anything other than that, there's nothing to see here. Like you said, he's going to miss back-to-back sets. So if you're in a weekly lineup setting here, if he has 4 games in a week, he's probably only going to play 2 or 3, like at best. So there's always going to be a better option, a higher ceiling option, and therefore, and also frankly, a higher floor option because he could miss 4 games in a week. There's nothing to see here. I know that he's starting when he plays for the Wizards, and could get some usage. But like you look at that Wizards roster, Malcolm Brogdon, Khris Middleton, Marcus Smart. Why are those guys on this roster when you have Bud Carrington, Koulibaly, Keyshawn George? Like you have so many young guys. Give minutes to those guys, and I think that's what we'll see more as the season winds down.
Drop Middleton and add Buzelis or Karis LeVert.
Yes.
They both have much higher upside. They're available in the vast majority of the league.
Karis LeVert is a very interesting idea in Atlanta. I like that new role for him.
Yeah, they don't have any depth. I mean, Krejci's hurt. Nance is hurt. They don't have much left there. So is he going to be a consistent option? No. But he's going to play way more than Middleton, and he's going to have much higher upside.
Yeah, and the Hawks playing a lot of those 145, 143 games. So
they're one of the top 3 teams in the league in pace of play, and I believe like over the last 10 games, I think they're the fastest paced team in the league. So yeah, those are just a couple of guys there. If you're saying, well, who am I going to drop Khris Middleton for? You guys are telling me to drop Khris Middleton. I like Khris Middleton. I'm a Bucks fan. I didn't want him traded to the Wizards. Well, those are 2 guys that you can pick up. All right, another veteran here, Terry Rozier. Are we betting? I don't know. I'm just kidding. We're not betting on Terry Rozier to rebound, but he's rostered in 57% of Yahoo leagues. He's averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 2.8 assists per game this season. He's shooting 40.4% from the field. Yuck. His usage rate is 20.7%. That is his lowest mark since the 2018-19 season when he played with the Celtics. Is it time to drop Terry Rozier?
No.
Oh,
this one's going to come as a little bit of a surprise.
All right, let's hear it.
He struggled to stay on the court the last couple of weeks. Before his injury, his numbers were a little bit higher than his season averages: 16 points, 5 boards, 3 assists over a 7-game stretch before that injury. This is a wait and see approach for me. And all it has to do with is that the Heat are bad. The Heat are not a good basketball team right now. They have to change things up. You have a guy like Terry Rozier on your bench. He's a guy that if I was a coach, I would be like, this guy could provide a spark. He's not the greatest player. He's not going to lead you to a championship, but he's a guy that can come in and provide a spark. The Heat need a spark right now. So this is kind of like a wait and see. Davion Mitchell is starting for Miami right now. No offense to the guy. Great defender. Great defender in college, transition to the NBA. You got to guard a lot bigger guys. He's done a fine job. I think there's a very easy move to be made here for Miami, inserting Rozier into the starting lineup or even just giving him 25-plus minutes. And if he gets that role and shots start to fall, this could get interesting. unlike Jrue Holiday and, the other Tyus Jones and Khris Middleton, the other guys we mentioned, I think Rozier could be a top 50 player in the last couple weeks of the season during the fantasy playoffs if he gets that role. So this isn't necessarily like add him or hold him because of what he is doing, but because of what he could do.
I respect your argument. I disagree. You mentioned Davion Mitchell. I think the Heat clearly like him. He's averaged 31 minutes over the last 6 games. They traded for him. They're playing him right away. I don't think Rozier is going to play enough. His shot's not falling this season. I think I'm now the official president of the Isaiah Collier fan club. I would much rather, if you need a guard, I would much rather add him. I'd much rather have Buzelis. I'd much rather have Karis LeVert. Those are 3 guys that are available. I'd much rather have Donovan Clingan, even though he's not a guard. Those are all just guys. I could, if he gets hot, he can score with the best of them. This just seems to be a lost. I'm not betting. Oh, I can't make that joke again. I'm not betting on Terry Rozier to rebound here.
Yeah, and like I said, like if you're relying on him to be a starter right now, you're probably screwed anyways. Sorry to tell you. But if you have a roster spot open, I agree. I'd probably take all of those top waiver wire guys, especially like Collier. But if you're playing in a sharper league and Collier's gone or something, I had to take one. I had to say no to one, right?
I'm all negative. Speaking of negative, Clint Capela is rostered in 71% of Yahoo leagues. He has not played more than 19 minutes in any of the 3 games since he returned from a personal issue. He averaged 6.3 points and 7.3 rebounds over those 3 games. He's clearly lost the starting job to Okongwu. He has not played more than 21 minutes in any of the 7 games since moving to the bench. So I am out on Clint Capela. There's no need for me to circle back. How about you, Kirien?
Yeah, I think you copied and pasted my notes exactly. That's exactly what I said. Look, Okongwu has been playing well. Atlanta hasn't been winning games. I think development is going to be the priority over the stretch run. We've kind of been talking about Okongwu taking Capela's spot for a couple of years now. It seems to finally have happened. Capela's going to get 10 rebounds a couple times a week, but the rest of the production just isn't going to be there to be worth a roster spot.
Yep. Go out and add Donovan Clingan, who's still – people panic because Clingan's had a couple of quiet games. Well, he's still racking up a lot of blocks, and that's what you need, blocks and rebounds. He's going to be good. Drop Clint Capela, add Donovan Clingan. Finally, I don't know if we should call him – there's Reggie Jackson was Mr. October, and they tried giving Jeter the Mr. November. Is there like a Mr. February? Because that might be Jerami Grant, who's rostered in 74% of Yahoo leagues. He had 20 points over 38 minutes against the Jazz on Monday. He had 9 rebounds the game prior against the Hornets. However, he is averaging just 14.4 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 2.3 assists per game this season. Why are we talking months with Jerami Grant? Because he doesn't see the month of April, okay? He didn't even know they still played basketball in April because he hasn't taken the floor in April in so long. He's like mid-March, I'm out. He's got his vacations planned. Something hurts. The Trailblazers are already got their eyes on the next year's draft pick. So I'm out because we're probably going to get maybe 5 more games, 6 more games out of Jerami Grant before he's packed his suitcase and headed for the Caribbean. How about you, Kirien? What are we doing with Jerami Grant?
Yeah, like I foreshadowed in the Rozier section, the rest of these are yeses for me. I'm definitely dropping Jerami Grant. He's kind of like that. A really hard guy to do projections for, frankly, because you look at the Trailblazers and you look at their roster and you're like, well, Jerami Grant, he's going to play 36 minutes per game. He's a good defender. He can make some threes. He can get some rebounds. And then real life happens and you're just like, why did I project Jerami Grant to average 20 points per game this season? That was dumb. It happens time and time again with this guy. Like you said, he'll pop in February and then go MIA in April. I'm definitely dropping Jerami Grant. Denny Avdija maybe is a guy that I would be worth I would roster Denny Avdija in like a 16-team league, maybe a 14-team league. But Jerami Grant, it just isn't there. And you mentioned Reggie Jackson on a fantasy basketball show, and instantly my head went to hoops and Reggie Jackson.
Sorry. Spring training has started. I also cover baseball, so my mind is already gravitating there a little bit.
Totally understandable.
Maybe we could give Jerami Grant the nickname of Mr. February because that's the last month he plays in.
I like
in
it.
the
I like
NBA.
it. I like it.
All right. So we do have time for a few questions, but before we take them, let's hear a word from our good friends at Pool Genius. Want to win more in your golf, March Madness, and football pools? Pool Genius gives you data-driven picks and strategies to outsmart the competition. With over a decade of analytics and historical data, Pool Genius is the only site dedicated exclusively to helping people win sports pools. With Pool Genius, juniors winning 3 times more often than expected. RotoWire listeners get exclusive offers. Visit poolgenius.com/RotoWire for up to 55% off or start a 4-day free trial. That's poolgenius.com/RotoWire. Okay, now it's almost time for your favorite segment of the week. We've talked about we talked about Boss. And let's go back, get Aunt Janet and Uncle Bob. Tell them to turn off The Price is Right because the best segment of the week is getting ready to come on. But before we do that, Kirien, let's do a couple questions here from the chat.
All right, let's do it. So 12 team, 9 cat, these are 3 guys that seem to be on the waiver wire conversation topic a lot. Bol, Olynyk, or Yabusele. I think Bol has the highest upside here. I know the last, he had the 23 points last night, and before that he'd only played 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes over the last 3 games. So he is, whatever, but the Suns were 1-2 during that stretch. I think they realized that Bol gives them the best opportunity to win, whether it's he's starting or playing 25 minutes off the bench. Yabusele, I think, got hurt. I think he's out with an eye injury, so he might not be back. And Olynyk is starting, but the production really hasn't been there. So I think Bol is the home run swing that we need to make right now to get into the playoffs or win a playoff game. What about you?
Yeah, I won't argue with that. I do think he's definitely has the highest upside. I'd probably go Olynyk though, just because I think he's got a higher floor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be nights where Bol plays like 10 minutes.
Yes, exactly.
And you don't know when those are coming. But I think the Pelicans like Olynyk, and I think they want to see him play a lot down the stretch. So he'd probably be the higher floor option for me. But I can't argue with Bol for sure.
Cool. All right, P-Dub says, good morning, guys. 10-team, 9 cat. Should I pick up Jalen Suggs, or is he not worth the ad? So the recent report was that he's not practicing. I thought that said that he did come back to practice at one point, so maybe he had a setback. So in a 10-team league, I'm probably not worth adding him. Now I will put the caveat, P-Dub, I've seen you in the chat a lot. You seem like a sharp. If you have solidified a playoff spot and Jalen Suggs isn't in your starting lineup and you can hold him as a bench option, I don't see why not. The Magic are going to need him to play in a couple weeks from now. So if you can, have him occupy a roster spot for the next couple of weeks and not give you any production, I think it could be worth it. What about you, Mike?
I wouldn't add him in a 10-team league. That report you're talking about, I think they said he was clear to start running. So he's been running, but he's not actually practicing.
Okay. Good.
That's concerning. I have him in a league, or I am most certainly going to make the playoffs. It is a 10-team league, but it's a points league instead of categories, and it's a 6-man bench, so it's pretty deep. I've held him throughout this whole thing. But would I pick him up? No. I'd rather have guys now that are producing. The only caveat, like you said, if you're way up and you don't need – the league I'm in is there's also point totals come into play, so that's why. But if you're way up, sure, and you have a spot, you can just stash him on. But I'd rather play – we might not see him for another couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back, he could play limited minutes for a week. So you might get another 2 weeks of no or very limited production from Jalen Suggs. So you could only maybe count on him for playoff production. That'd be it.
Yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength there. And then if he does play in the fantasy playoffs, that could be a top 60, top 50 kind of guy. Cool.
Yep.
All right, WS, good morning. Would you drop Wendell Carter, Yves Missy, or Chris Dunn for Bol? I don't know if I'm dropping Missy, but what about you?
You could drop either of the other two.
Yeah.
Carter or Chris Dunn, that's fine. Chris Dunn has zero upside, none. So he'd be the one I would drop. I mean, I drop Wendell Carter too. I wouldn't have him on it. I don't have him on any teams, and I wouldn't have him on any teams. He's a walking injury. He doesn't play enough. The Magic have plenty of guys up front. I would drop either Dunn or Carter, and I wouldn't hesitate to do it for Bol.
Yeah, and Missy had some rough a rough patch there, a little bit of rookie hiccups, but he's got double-digit boards in 3 straight, 5 blocks during that stretch. The Chris Dunn thing, like you don't want to have a guy get 6 steals and then pick him up and expect 6 steals every night, guys.
Yes.
Like he got 6 steals, he averages 1.5 steals per game. That means the next couple of games he's not going to be getting 6 steals.
He's not Dyson Daniels, guys. He's not.
Yes, exactly. As much as we would have liked him to be. Miles Bridges yesterday, he did not have a great game. All right. Hey, guys, would you prefer Caruso or Cason Wallace? Ooh, 9-cat head-to-head. So I guess this depends on the rest of your team. If you need defensive stats, Caruso. If you need threes, Cason Wallace.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Caruso, you never know. He might get some added rest days down the stretch. He is a guy that has a hard time playing a lot of minutes and staying healthy, and the Thunder are so far ahead in the Western Conference. So he might get some rest days, but I like that train of thought. So, Kirien, let's do one more. Do this one for our man Damian here. He's got a good question here.
Before we move on from this one, like if Aaron Wiggins is available, he's the other guy outside of like the big group in OKC that I would roster. Over the last 11 games, Wiggins 19 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, and a steal. That does include a 41-point explosion against the Kings. But Aaron Wiggins has very quietly been a pretty solid piece for OKC. All right, you said one more question?
Yeah, so this one from Damian here.
All right, cool. 10-team ESPN points, considering dropping Vassell for Scoot Henderson. Vassell had me suffering yesterday, hovering over the drop button at half, and he actually played great in the second half. Yeah, this is a tough one. I think we obviously got to mention Wemby here, right? Without Wemby, there's going to be a lot more scoring opportunities for Vassell going forward. He is a bit of a streaky shooter, but, when he gets hot, it can look really good. Like Damian said, single digits in 4 of the last 6, so that's not great. But before that, he had scored in double digits in 22 of the last 24. So I think this is just a little bit of a rough shooting stretch. I would roll with Vassell for the rest of the season. What about you, Mike?
I agree. Yes, he can be frustrating at times. Yes, he did. I watched that game last night, and he was bad in the first half. It was a weird game. The Pelicans looked lifeless in the first quarter, and they ended up winning the game. They played so much better down the stretch. They made a run before the half. I wouldn't try. I understand the upside with Henderson, and he could be one of those silly season stars for a bad Trailblazers team, but I'd rather have Vassell, exactly like you said, with Wembanyama being out. So thank you, everyone, for sending in the questions, and for being so active in the chat. We appreciate it. And now it's time for the best segment in all of the podcasting world, the What Was That Stat Lines of the Week. Kirien, you're up first, my friend.
All right, so I kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Last night was all about Luka, Luka versus the Mavericks. See what was going on there. This kind of felt to me. I watched the highlights after I got back from the movie. This kind of felt to me like the dad taking his son or the uncle taking his son to the gym to play pickup with the boys, right? And the son's younger. He wants to prove himself. He's got all this energy, and Luka's going up against his former team, and he wants to take all these shots, and he wants to show everybody how good he is and how in shape he is. But he struggled because he was forcing it, and the shots weren't there, and it was a little bit of a struggle. And then come fourth quarter, Uncle Bron has to come through here and save Luka, save his butt. 7 for 9 from the field, 16 points, 5 boards, and 2 assists. The Lakers are now 9-2 in their last 11 games. LeBron just took over this game. Probably could have taken the game over at any point, but he wanted to let Luka do his thing. 40-year-old LeBron saying, everybody, give me the ball. Get out of my way. We're not going to lose to the Mavericks, especially if they don't have Luka or AD. What was that? LeBron seems to do this every night. It's getting kind of crazy. I didn't think the Lakers could play defense with this roster, but they've actually been very, very good defensively over the last couple games.
Yeah, it didn't help the Mavericks that they had P.J. Washington essentially playing center. That's not exactly a body that's going to stop LeBron from running into the lane. I think Dwight Powell came back last night too. I think I saw him on the floor at one point, but again, not exactly a guy that's going to stop LeBron. Yeah, that was another. He's been. I wonder if the Luka Doncic trade has also given him a little bit of jolt of energy because LeBron's been great.
Yeah,
since Doncic got there. So that's a great. What was that stat line of the week? So Kirien's talking about 2 good teams: the Mavericks, the Lakers, superstars, all these exciting players. I want to talk about February 22nd's matchup between the Portland Trailblazers and the Charlotte Hornets. These are two garbage teams, okay? They should at least be able to hang with each other, right? No. The Trailblazers won 141-88. What was that? LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams all played in the game for the Hornets. So it's not like this was Nick Smith and Moussa Diabate. Those were the best guys on the Hornets, and they lost 141-88. The Trailblazers, Toumani Camara had a plus-minus of plus 45 in 28 minutes. Elfrid Payton played 22 minutes off the bench for the Hornets, okay? He had a plus-minus of minus 36. Minus 36 in 22 minutes. LaMelo Ball went 1 for 10 in the game. He had 5 points over 22 minutes. Anthony Simons, Kamara, Shaedon Sharpe, and Jabari Walker combined for 85 points. That's 3 fewer points than the entire Hornets team scored. The Charlotte Hornets stink. They are next level bad. They have lost each of their last 3 games by at least 36 points. 141-88. Charlotte Hornets, what was that? You stink. You have to try. My man Eric Collins is being wasted on this terrible team. Can we put Eric Collins on a team that matters? He should not have to talk about Nick Smith Jr., Elfrid Payton, and Moussa Diabate. I can't take it.
I love it. The only thing I'm going to add is, the Trailblazers, they're 25-33. They're like, I'm not saying anything. They have a bet. It is February 26th. I'm just gonna say something right now. Don't put your money on this, but you can roast me in the chat. I think the Trailblazers will end with a better record than the San Antonio Spurs.
That wouldn't be surprising. The Spurs have been bad on the road all season, and now that they don't have Wembanyama, I could see that. Here's a question: do the Trailblazers finish with a better record than the Bulls, who are going to be the 10th seed in the East, unless the Brooklyn Nets pass him? We're looking at Bulls Nets for the 10th seed. Oh my gosh, this is terrible.
I think this is a great spot to end the show, but yes, I think I'm also going to say the Trailblazers will end with a better record than the Bulls. But the Bulls will still make the play-in tournament. That's just
Trailblazers, Bulls, Nets could all finish with better records than the 76ers. That's the note to end today's show on. So with that, thank you for listening to today's RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Thanks for all the questions in the chat. Until Kirien and I come to you again next Wednesday, hopefully your fantasy basketball team stay healthy and you bring home some W's.
Have a good one, everybody. Love all the Norman Powell lovers and all the Pinky P haters.